And it looked like ESPN just told the shocking truth as to why Sandy Brondello was let go by the New York Liberty.
New York just pulled off one of the most baffling moves in WNBA history. Sandy Brondello, the woman who coached the Liberty to their very first championship, has been fired. They say it was because of performance, but the real reason might have everything to do with her praising Caitlyn Clark. Yes, you heard that right. Complimenting Caitlyn Clark might have ended the career of one of the most successful coaches in the league. Let me explain why. The answer is simple. This is a coach who did everything right. Let's set the stage clearly. Sandy Brondello was not some filler coach, some temporary hire meant to keep the seat warm. She was the architect. She was the one who took a flashy, expensive roster and turned it into a champion. When Brondello arrived, the Liberty were stacked on paper but very messy on the court. They had never won a WNBA finals. Breanna Stewart had the name recognition. John Cole Jones had the power. Sabrina Ionescu had the fan base, but the chemistry wasn't there. They looked more like individuals chasing highlights than a unit chasing rings. Sandy changed that. She installed a system. She managed egos that many coaches would have run from. She got them to buy in. And in doing so, she delivered the one thing New York fans had been starved of forever: a championship. Not only did she bring them that long-awaited title, but she also built credibility, and the numbers back it up. Brondello became the coach with the most wins in Liberty history. She joined an elite company as one of only 2 coaches to win titles with multiple franchises. Her 40 playoff wins put her second all-time in the league. That's not luck. That's not a coincidence. That's elite coaching. By every standard we judge success: rings, records, reputation. Sandy Brondello checked the box. She did everything right. So explain this to me. How does a coach who did everything right end up fired less than a year after bringing home a trophy? You don't throw out the coach with the most wins in your history for performance. That explanation doesn't just fall flat. It insults our intelligence. Now let's talk about the explanation the Liberty tried to feed the public. Their press release painted the picture of a polite parting. They thanked Sandy for her contributions. They called her a leader. They highlighted her achievements. And then they dropped the line about moving in a new direction. We all know what that line means. If this was really about performance, let's look at the logic. You fire your coach with most wins? The one who brought you your first ever championship? Who are you kidding? Not only does the story make zero sense, but the timing is even worse. Why wait until now? If the Liberty were truly unhappy with postseason results, why didn't they pull the plug last year when they lost in the finals? Why wait until the season after she delivered the biggest prize the franchise ever dreamed of? It reeks of something else, something they don't want to say out loud. We all know that when you hype up someone's record in the same breath as you're firing them, it's obvious the real reason lies somewhere else. And all the roads lead to one name: Caitlyn Clark. Now we hit the nerve of the story. Caitlyn Clark, the one player who has turned the entire league upside down in just 2 years. The one player fans can't stop watching, critics can't stop debating, and executives can't stop stressing about. Sandy Brondello didn't play the political game. She didn't downplay Clark. She didn't pretend the numbers weren't real. She didn't roll her eyes like some of the veterans. Instead, she said it straight. Clark has changed the WNBA. Clark has boosted ticket sales, TV ratings, and jersey sales. Clark is transformative.
Yeah, you never want to see a player get injured, and a player like Caitlyn coming back has had a few. She's a great player. It would have been good for our crowd to see her, but hopefully they get to see her after post All-Star and get to play them again. As for the All-Star, I'm excited to get to know her a little bit. I think that's the part of the All-Star, is going to coach players that you haven't coached before and get them to know them a little bit and enjoy the whole.
And that honesty in today's WNBA climate was treated like treason. Not only did Brondello give Clark her flowers, but she did it while coaching a team loaded with its own stars. In New York, the Liberty's entire brand revolves around Stewart, Jones, and Ionescu. They are the faces of the franchise. They are the storyline ownership wants front and center. So when their own head coach went out and said Clark was the one changing the game, that didn't sit right. It didn't sit right with executives. It didn't sit right with owners. And it may not have sat right with some players who see themselves as the true standard. Look at the timing. Brondello praises Caitlyn publicly. Those quotes go viral. She calls her generational. She credits her for bringing new eyes to the sport. Days later, she's fired. That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern. Not only does it feel intentional, but it also exposes the insecurity running through the league. Instead of embracing Clark's success as something that lifts everyone, too many in power see it as a threat. They don't want the narrative shifting. They don't want their own stars overshadowed.
Yeah, you never want to see a player get injured, and a player like Caitlyn coming back has had a few injuries this year. She's a great player. It would have been good for our craft to see her, but hopefully they get to see her after post All-Star. You get to play them again. As for the All-Star, I'm excited to get to know her a little bit. I think that's the part of the All-Star. It's going to coach players that you haven't coached before and get them to know them a little bit and enjoy the whole celebration.
So what happens when a coach doesn't stick to the script? She's gone, and that's where fans put 2 and 2 together. Sandy Brondello didn't lose her job because she couldn't coach. She lost it because she told the truth. She said Caitlyn Clark was special. She said she mattered. And in a league drowning in petty politics, that was enough to get her axed. This entire mess pulls back the curtain on something the league has been trying to hide. The WNBA is insecure, deeply insecure, and Caitlyn Clark has become the lightning rod that exposes it. Think about it. We've seen veterans roll their eyes when Clark gets asked about. We've seen players check her harder than anyone else on the court. We've seen coaches give backhanded compliments or flat out act annoyed when her name comes up. That doesn't happen by accident. That's resentment bubbling up. Not only is Clark's popularity impossible to ignore, but it also creates a spotlight distribution problem. Players who have been grinding in the league for years feel overlooked. Ownership groups that invested millions into stars like Breanna Stewart don't want to admit that one rookie from Indiana is pulling more eyes than their whole roster combined. Instead of celebrating Clark's rise as a win for everyone, too many people act like acknowledging her takes something away from them. That's the insecurity at the heart of this. And Sandy Brondello refused to play along. She didn't dismiss Clark. She didn't pretend her impact was exaggerated. She gave her respect, and in doing so, she crossed an invisible line. She made the Liberty front office feel like their own stars weren't the center of the story anymore. And in a league where egos are treated like fragile glass, that's enough to break everything. Not only does this show how political the WNBA has become, but it also proves how backwards the priorities are. Growth should be the goal. Honesty should be rewarded. Instead, it's punished. Now let's break down the timeline because timing is everything here. Sandy praises Caitlyn. She calls her an amazing talent. She mentions her impact on ratings and sales. Those quotes get shared everywhere. Social media, ESPN clips, fan pages. It spreads like wildfire and everyone's talking about Clark again. The Liberty stumbled in the postseason. Almost immediately, ownership announced that Brondello's contract wouldn't be renewed. No slow review process. No drawn-out off-season evaluation. Just a quick cold statement. Thanks for everything. Now goodbye. Not only is the timing brutal, but it's suspicious. If this was really about performance, why wasn't the decision made last year after falling short in the finals? Why fire the coach who just gave you the first title in franchise history? Why do it now, right after she went viral for praising Caitlyn Clark? Fans see through this. They know when dots connect too cleanly. They know coincidence when they see it, and this doesn't look like a coincidence. It looks like cause and effect, and the way the Liberty handled it made it worse. The press release was corporate and empty, praising her accomplishments while quietly sliding in that she was done. You don't hype someone up as your best coach and then cut them loose unless you're hiding the real reason. Not only did the front office expose their insecurity, but they also exposed their fear. Fear of Caitlyn Clark, fear of their own stars feeling overshadowed, fear of the truth being louder than their narrative. Here's the part nobody in New York wants to talk about: the players. Breanna Stewart, John Cole Jones, Sabrina Ionescu. These are the faces of Liberty. These are the stars the franchise markets, the ones they expect to carry the brand. And guess what? They liked Brondello. They trusted her. Stewart literally voiced support for her before she was fired. Not only does firing her create distrust, but it also fractures the locker room. How do you expect players to believe in culture when the coach who built it is tossed aside for politics? How do you tell them loyalty matters when you show none? The Liberty front office just sent a message to its own stars. Your trust doesn't matter. Your voice doesn't matter. Winning doesn't even matter. The only thing that matters is control of the narrative. And that's dangerous because Stewart, Jones, and Ionescu are not just any players. They're MVP level stars. They're respected league-wide. If they feel betrayed, if they feel like the organization prioritizes prioritizes politics over basketball, that spreads. Not only could this fracture the locker room, but it could also damage the Liberty's reputation long term. Who wants to play for a franchise that fires the coach who brought them a championship? Who wants to coach a team where one honest compliment about Caitlyn Clark can cost you your job? Or this whole thing could be much darker. Could it be that the players themselves hated the attention Clark got and they could not handle their coach praising Caitlyn and forced authorities to change their coach? There is a high possibility for this. Now, this isn't just about the Liberty. This is bigger. This is a message sent across the entire WNBA, and that message is chilling. If you praise Caitlyn Clark too much, you might be next. Think about the ripple effect. Coaches all around the league are watching. They're seeing one of the best coaches in Liberty history, a championship winner, fired months after praising Clark's impact. That makes people nervous. Not only does it make coaches think twice before speaking freely, but it also tells players that honesty comes with consequences. That's not growth, that's fear, and fear kills progress. How do you expect to attract new fans when your league punishes people for acknowledging the player driving the most attention? How do you expect to grow when the conversation around Clark is treated like a forbidden subject? The WNBA claims it wants to grow the game, but this exposes the truth. It doesn't want growth unless it's on their terms. It doesn't want stars unless they're the approved ones. And if that means silencing the reality that Caitlyn Clark is carrying the spotlight, then they'll do it, even if it means firing a champion to prove a point. Now let's focus on the root of it all. Caitlyn Clark. Clark has transformed the league. This is the truth, and nothing can change that. Look at the numbers. TV ratings have broken records. Ticket sales in arenas across the country spiked the moment Indiana was on the schedule. Road games turned into sellouts. Jersey sales skyrocketed. Kids are showing up in Caitlyn Clark gear. Not only did she elevate the Indiana Fever from irrelevance to must-watch, but she also lifted the entire WNBA. People who never tuned in before are suddenly paying attention. That's not opinion, that's a fact. And yet, instead of embracing that, the league has turned Clark into a dividing line. Instead of celebrating her, some coaches and players treat her like a problem. Instead of using her as a growth engine, the Liberty punished their coach for acknowledging her. That's the insanity of this situation. Sandy Brondello didn't say anything controversial. She didn't take shots at her own stars. She didn't belittle anyone else. She simply said Caitlyn Clark has boosted the game. She told the truth. Not only was she right, but she also said what the league should have been shouting from the rooftops. Instead, she paid the price. The irony is brutal because the very thing the Liberty wanted to silence, the Clark effect, is louder than ever. Every firing, every controversy, every petty act just adds to her spotlight. I think Sandy might be the only sensible coach in the league who said the right thing. She even said that she was excited to work with Caitlyn. She is one of the most accomplished coaches in WNBA history. 2 titles with 2 different franchises. 40 playoff wins, the second most all time. She belongs in the conversation with the greats. I say get her as Caitlyn Clark's coach, and let Stephanie White coach the New York Liberty. Not only will she land another job, but it will be best for everyone. But it's not like Sandy doesn't have options. Other franchises desperate for credibility would kill to have her. And here's the delicious part. Imagine Brondello coming back with another team, leading them to success, and then knocking the Liberty out of the playoffs. That would be karma in its purest form. The very coach they tossed aside could end up being the one who haunts them. Players love her. Rival coaches respect her. Even Becky Hammond of the Aces came out and said she hated how they fired Brondello, calling her a quality person and coach. So what does all this add up to? It adds up to a league that looks insecure. It adds up to a franchise that looks petty. It adds up to a firing that makes no basketball sense. Not only does this expose how fragile the WNBA's leadership is, but it also highlights the fear they have of Caitlyn Clark's shadow. They don't want her praised. They don't want her acknowledged as the new standard. They want control of the narrative, even if it means firing a champion. And here's the reality they don't want to face. Control doesn't silence truth. Clark has already changed the game. Fans know it. Numbers prove it. Kids see it. Media covers it. And every attempt to downplay her only makes her presence stronger. I will keep you guys updated, so make sure to subscribe and hit the like button.